So earlier in August, a cast sheet for Spider-Man Homecoming was leaked onto Reddit with a few interesting character names on it. The problem at the time, though, was that it seemed obviously fake. As you can see, there's no mention of confirmed cast members like Michael Keaton, or even a reference to Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, so it seemed very fake. However, it seems as if this cast sheet was somewhat confirmed through an interview with Hannibal Buress. Now, if you didn't know, Hannibal was added to the cast, and according to the leaked cast sheet, was playing a character called Coach Wilson. Recently, Hannibal did an interview with morning show The Breakfast Club, where he revealed his Spider-Man role as, what else, a gym teacher. Here, take a look at this.
In Spider-Man, I play a gym teacher. I play one of the dumbass characters that don't realize he's Spider-Man. He's Peter Parker.
Got you.
I'm just a bigger guy like, oh man, this guy's really athletic.
Now with that one comment, this cast sheet is starting to look a bit more legitimate. So with that in mind, I thought it was time to break it down and take a look at the potentially confirmed roles in Spider-Man's upcoming movie. Just before we get started, I'm going to tack on a potential spoiler warning, just in case anyone watching this wants to go into the movie completely blind. Okay, so first, let's talk about the lack of other names on this sheet. Why aren't there more cast members? Well, I'm guessing that's because this sheet is only for a specific scene in the movie, set either in Peter Parker's high school or near the high school. We know this because of the character names on here. Look, most of them are people we know to be either students or faculty members. Given that there are also criminal characters on this sheet, something I'll touch on later, I'm wondering if we'll see Peter on his way to class in the beginning of the film, only stopping to catch the Shocker and his gang as Spider-Man, as seen in these behind-the-scenes photos from a while back. As far as the students go, initially, there isn't too much that's going to grab your attention. We see names like Liz Allen, who isn't entirely important in her own right, unless you remember that her stepbrother is Mark Raxton, who eventually gets turned into the supervillain Molten Man, and more familiar names like Flash Thompson and Betty Brant. However, if you look at the rest of the list, you'll see a ton of interesting details. Zendaya, who you might remember as the center of a huge internet controversy after a rumor, remember nothing confirmed, just a rumor, floated around that she was going to play Mary Jane Watson. However, the cast sheet mentions that her character is named Michelle, the same name that's been given to her role ever since she was first announced to be in the movie. Now, does this mean that Marvel isn't pulling a fast one and won't reveal Michelle as Mary Jane? Of course not. That possibility is going to exist up until the movie's in theaters. But for now, it seems like Mary Jane won't actually appear in this movie. I also want to direct your attention to some old school Spidey throwbacks, Sally and Tiny. Characters named Sally Averill and Brian Tiny McKeever were part of a clique at Midtown High School and were originally friends of Peter Parker before they stopped associating with him and started hanging out with popular kids like Flash Thompson. Now in the comics, Sally actually became the superhero Bluebird, using her natural athletic abilities to try to fight crime. However, she wasn't exactly good at it, so Spidey tried to get her to stop. However, she eventually died in a car accident while trying to get to the scene of a crime in Untold Tales of Spider-Man issue number 13. Tiny, on the other hand, had a rough childhood and an abusive father, leading to him becoming a bully in his own right. However, he and Peter eventually smooth things out. Now, here's where things get really interesting. If you look, you'll notice a character named Cindy on this sheet. Now, I think this is supposed to be the movie version of a comic book character named Cindy Moon, who first appeared in a background cameo role in Amazing Spider-Man number 1. Comic Cindy was a high school classmate of Peter Parker, who went on the same high school field trip he did, and was also bitten by the same radioactive spider. She got similar spider-themed powers and eventually started fighting crime as the superhero Silk. We also see a character named Jason on this sheet. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, this name reminds me of the comic book character Jason Macendale, who acted as two different supervillains over the years, Jack-O-Lantern and Hobgoblin. He was eventually bonded to a demon and was then murdered by the original Hobgoblin, Roderick Kingsley, while in jail. The backstory on this character is insane, and even though there's a ton of comics history I'm sure Marvel's not going to give to the film version of the character, if this is even the same guy, there's still a good bit of interesting situations they could put this Jason in. Speaking of hobgoblins, let's talk about Ned Leads. Now, in the comics, Ned was a reporter for the Daily Bugle and competed with Peter for Betty Brant's affections. Now, Leads was eventually brainwashed by Roderick Kingsley so Kingsley could have a scapegoat in case he ever got caught as the Hobgoblin, but was later deemed not useful and was eventually killed off by the order of Jason Macendale, who replaced him in the Hobgoblin role. With so many supervillains getting tossed around, it's only fair to talk about the specific villains on this sheet, which in this case happens to be Herman Schultz, aka the Shocker, and his gang. Now what's interesting to me is that Herman Schultz, the one and only Shocker himself, is listed as Shocker number 2 here on this sheet. Kinda implies that there's gonna be a whole gang of Shockers, right? Instead of just one Shocker with a bunch of thugs with guns. Now Goon number 2 is given the last name Ballinger, but I think this one's gonna end up being an original character, since I wasn't able to find a character specific to Spider-Man with this name. There is a character by the name of Lenny Ballinger who works for the construction company Damage Control, but I have a feeling the two aren't connected. Speaking of connections, isn't it interesting that there's a Principal Morita listed here? Kind of like Jim Morita, one of the men who fought alongside Captain America in World War II. And isn't it also interesting that both characters are played by Kenneth Choi? Now, obviously, this principal is a relative of the World War II soldier from Fresno.
What, are we taking everybody?
I'm from Fresno, Ace.
I think it's also neat how we see a Mrs. Warren listed here, considering that the real name of Spider-Man villain the Jackal is Miles Warren. In case you didn't know, Miles Warren was a college professor of Peter Parker, who had an unhealthy obsession with Peter's first love, Gwen Stacy. Warren eventually got DNA samples of the both of them and kickstarted the 1990s nonsense Clone Saga storyline. Before that, though, he settled down with a woman named Monica and started a family. Now, I can't help but think that this Mrs. Warren on the cast sheet will turn out to be Monica Warren, the wife of a future Spider-Man villain. Now, hardcore comic fans might also recognize the name Mr. Harrington. In Amazing Spider-Man number 32, readers were introduced to the character Roger Harrington, who was the principal of Midtown High School. After the clue given by Starr during a bit on Conan,
working on a movie called Spider-Man, and I play a
we can safely conclude that this Roger Harrington is actually a teacher. Now, to cap things off, let's talk about Mr. Cobwell. Unlike the other characters I've mentioned so far, Mr. Cobwell almost seems like he has no previous history in the comics, unless he's actually Professor Cobwell, 2Bs. First seen in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 2, going way back. Aside from being a famous electronics expert in the comics, he's really not all that important to Spider-Man lore, and with that, I think we covered all the names we can on this cast sheet. Now, all in all, I'm really excited to see how Marvel expands on Spider-Man's slice of the MCU. And if this cast sheet is any indication, then it looks like they're already starting off on the right foot. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button, maybe leave me a comment while you're at it, and go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to check out any of my social media pages. I've got a Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. All those links are going to be in the description below. And I've also got my last video right there in the middle of your screen, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and click it, check it out. Alright, and I will see you all next time.